Okay, hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about JavaScript objects. So, definition of JavaScript objects. According to MDN, Mozilla Developers Network, JavaScript is designed on a simple object-based paradigm. An object is a collection of properties, and a property name or key and a value. A property's value can be a function, in which case the property is known as a method. In addition to objects that are predefined in the browser, you can define your own objects. And W3 Schools tells us that all JavaScript values except for primitives are objects. So JavaScript properties and methods. JavaScript objects are similar to objects in other programming languages in that they can have both properties and methods. Properties are values stored in the object. Properties can be of any primitive data type as well as other objects. Methods are functions attached to the object. So here's an example. We've got properties and methods example. We've got a person, an object. His first name is John. His last name is Doe. His ID is 5566. And his full name is a method. It's a function that returns the first name with a space and then the last name. There are two ways to create new objects, through an object literal or a constructor. Object literal format is as shown here. Var object equals property1 colon value1 comma all the way through property n value n. You can have any number of properties and values. And you can also use the constructor format, which to do that you create a variable and then you assign it to a new object. You can then, after creating the new object, you can then add properties and methods using dot notation or bracket notation as shown in our example here. Accessing properties and methods. There's a few ways to access properties and methods, or properties in particular, not methods. Properties can be accessed using dot notation, object name dot property name, or they can be accessed using bracket notation, object name square brackets, property name. To access methods, you have to use dot notation with parentheses. If you don't use the parentheses when accessing the method, you will get the method definition. So you got to be careful of that. Constructors are a way to create objects for use in creating numerous objects of the same type. So you can use constructors to do this. To do this, you first create a function definition and use the keyword this to set the properties. Ensure that your function name is proper case to distinguish it as a constructor. And when you want to create an object, call the constructor and put your property values in to the parameters of the constructor. Objects created this way are essentially classes. So it's basically like a class from other programming language types. Adding properties and methods. So there's a few ways you can add properties and methods. You can either add it through the constructor or through the literal definition. You can also add them using dot notation. So if you have an object and you use dot or bracket notation, you can add an additional property to that object. You can also add additional methods in the same way using dot notation. This adds the method to the existing object or the property to the existing object. Prototypes are a handy way of being able to add methods and properties to a class after the fact. So in addition, to add additional properties or methods to a class of objects, you can use the prototype property. This will add it directly to the method, the property or method directly to the object constructor. But W3 Schools gives us a warning not to modify standard JavaScript objects, only objects that we have created. Here's some examples. We created the person, then we added the prototype nationality and set it to English. So by default, creating a new person will add that person's nationality as English. And here we've got a prototype function that displays the first and last name that was added after the fact. So if we were then to look at the definition of person, it would have this dot first name equals first, this dot last name equals last, this dot age equals age, this dot eye color equals eye color, and this dot name equals function return this dot first name plus this dot last name. The keyword this is a special keyword in JavaScript. It's used to in inside methods to refer to the current object. If you're using it outside of a method, it refers to the global object, which is the window. The method full name in the example uses this to refer to the person object. Thus, the function will return the first name and last name of the person object. So when it's called on this person, it will return the first name and last name combined in a string. Accessors are another very useful tool with JavaScript objects. Accessors are ways of accessing data through dot notation without parentheses, in particular for methods. And it's ways of being able to pre-process data coming in or going out of your object. So there are two accessors, they're get and set, and they're used before the method definition to show to distinguish it as an accessor. Get is used to return data, and set is used to set data. Set always takes a parameter as part of the function. You have to have a parameter in there or it will not work. These can be, so the pre-processing data in the examples here, we got get lang return this dot language dot to uppercase. So it takes our lowercase en and puts it as uppercase and then displays it. On this one, we got whatever we put in, and in this case we put en in lowercase, it will uppercase it before storing it in the object. And it also provides simpler syntax in the fact that for calling the method, you can call it in regular dot notation without the parentheses, which allows you to then call person.lang without parentheses. So it follows the same suit as all the rest of the properties, makes it act as more like a property than a method. And here's my references. I got information from Mozilla Developer Network, JavaScript specific information, and W3 Schools, and JavaScript object definition. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you some examples. So here's my example code that I put together. Got over here some code from JavaScript code for generating an object. And here's my example page. So I've got some descriptions about JavaScript objects on here, and I'll go ahead and provide links with my video on how you can access my webpage. You can play around with it and look at the code. So in this example, we'll start by gathering some information to generate an object. So I just used some text, and let's give him an age of 25 and web design and development major. And we click the button generate object, and it will run the code over here. Generate object creates the object. You can see here we get the values from the form. We pre-process the values, make sure that the values are coming in clean, the data is coming in properly. And if it is, then we'll generate an object. Right here we create the object in object literal notation. And we had a get function to show the content, which shows the details, all of the properties in the object. I added major as a property after the fact, just to show that that can be done. And then I created another function that I added after the fact as well, that displays the object details. So this displays the content of the object in a nice user-friendly view. This shows the object in the object definition view. And then here I set the inner HTML of this element to show the object and then show the content. As you can see here, the show content, because it was a getter, it does not have the bracket notation here. And I also put in here an else statement so that if we put in bad data, like if we try to have somebody put in some HTML code, it will say input data is malformed, ensure that your name contains only alpha characters and your age is a numeric value. It checks to make sure that we have valid data going in. And then the next portion, I went ahead and in here I showed the JavaScript code for it as well, including the comments. And I've got this generate multiple objects button, which on my page I had already loaded it. But what it does is I have over here I've got generate multiple function, and I create 5 descriptions and 5 games. And the text, then I set a text value to store the contents of the games, and then I display that in the div down here and make the div visible. Because originally, here I'll reload the page so you can see. Originally, there's no div down there. You can't see it down there at all. All the way down at the bottom, it won't scroll any further. You generate that, and it makes the div visible and fills it in with details. So the game constructor takes the name, manufacturer, and description, sets in the constructor, it sets the name to the past name, the manufacturer to the past manufacturer, and the description to the parameter description. Then I added the prototype, show content, which displays the properties. And then the description is the same kind of thing. I've got the parameters, players, age, time, and summary. And they're all set in the constructor. And then I added a prototype, show content, to display the object in JavaScript form. So you can see there, it shows all of the parts to the object and returns it. So in doing that, we create the objects using the constructors, and then we display them, and it gives us our nice pretty view here. We can actually see what the contents of the object are. I don't believe I have anything else to discuss, so we'll talk about it more in our meeting on Saturday, and if you have any questions, let me know, and we can learn more about the power of objects.